All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. This is going to be after waivers for week 3 of fantasy football. This is going to be the proactive waiver wire show. Stayed up till midnight, stashing guys at the bottom of my bench a week earlier than everybody else. So in this case, we'll start real quick with defenses. If you're in a situation right now that you can start stashing your defenses a week ahead of time, the two that I would be looking at to go after, you're looking at, look at my notes, the Bills right now, if they're available, going after the Saints. The Saints is going to be that one of those offenses that we will be targeting all year right now. And then the other one that I would look at right now, if they're available, would be the Texans going up against Cam Ward. He's a little bit of a sack magnet right now, so I would be predicting that ahead of time. Now, there are other offenses that we may or may not be targeting as the season goes on. We're looking at like maybe Carson Wentz and the Vikings, maybe Jake Browning and the Bengals, but I would not be stashing those defenses right now. If you're wondering about that, because my mind may be changed, and there are probably still potential league winners, guys with roads to win leagues, that are going to be available on your waiver wire that I would rather be stashing at the bottom of my bench and waiting to see if those guys pay off than trying to predict a defense that I may not like rolling next week, if that makes any sense to anybody. Now, the other thing that I will talk about real quick, I did see the comment about trades. I'm not a big trader in my league. I usually leave those up to my co-managers in both those leagues. I'm not a very good used car salesman. I usually go like, this is what the trade is, and I think it's fair. Now, the other thing is, trades may or may not exist in all leagues equally. That's part of the reason why I don't necessarily talk about that. Like, I know some leagues, you can't get anybody to trade. My high school, less competitive league, no one trades. In my main money league, trades are not rare, but they're not common because it takes a lot of work to make both sides feel like they're not going to get screwed over in that league. In general, 1-for-1 trades are bad. I always look at how does it upgrade my lineup significantly, and that's the other thing you got to ask yourself. How does it upgrade your opponent's lineup? If they don't like that trade either, they're probably not going to do it. It's not even worth bringing up sometimes. I have heard some of the trade conversation about like, well, you have to like put a bad offer out there to see if they'll bite in the first place. And if that's the way that you want to do business, go ahead and do that. Like I said, I don't have the personality for that. I usually go like, I think this is a fair trade, and I think it benefits both of us. And then like the counter offer is usually something that I laugh at, and I leave that up to my co-managers. Bad trades can be good in that case, like getting guys off your roster that you're never going to use, you don't know what to do with, and you don't want to like let them go for free onto the waiver wire. Package that guy together with somebody else that you're trying to get rid of, and then send it off to basically get like one guy back that is like one guy that one of the same value as the other guy. Let them deal with that guy, the problem on their bench instead of it being on your bench. And one of the things I will always ask myself about the value of the player that I have is when I'm going to use those guys. And I will look ahead into my bye weeks and go, well, who theoretically would slot into that bye week that week? Do I really want to roll that guy that week? Some of those guys out there you'll see have a lot of value for you because you might end up getting to the point where you're rolling them like 5-6 times during the course of a season. You could project that out ahead of time. That means that they have a lot of value to you, and if you trade for somebody else, like you may not be able to slot them in the exact same way and get those get the return on them that you would like. All right, so moving on to the stuff that we're here for, starting out with the 49ers. It does look like Brock Purdy is not going to play week 3. There's a lot to break down on top of this. Mac Jones in this game against the Saints. The outcome of the Saints game was both predictable and unpredictable at the same time. Saints have no incentive to make any game be fantasy football friendly. Just kind of remember that. Mac Jones also has no incentive to make any game fantasy football friendly. He does have a lot of toys. We'll talk about some of these backup quarterbacks that have a lot of toys and chasing it three touchdown passes. Yeah, he could do that again. He also like lost a fumble. I could definitely see that you could get like turnover machine Mac Jones. He is not the same type of quarterback as Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy is grip it and rip it, and Mac Jones is kind of like hold it and make sure it's there, and then he'll gunslinger it into the other defense sometimes. So I bring this up because we'll talk about like the wide receivers real quick, really fast. Like I still really like Ricky Pearsall. I still think that he has the possibility to win leagues. Remember how the 49ers offense is designed. So now that you have the injury to Brock Purdy, who knows when Brock Purdy is going to necessarily come back. Jennings steps in, and he does like 10 for 5 for 86 or 89 with a touchdown in this game. I want to look at my notes with Ricky Pearsall. He did no red zone targets went to any of the wide receivers in this game, to bring that up really quick. With Jennings probably playing like the big bully X, and then Pearsall playing the Z. The one thing that I would look at down the line if I was thinking about like Ricky Pearsall, and I may end up packaging Ricky Pearsall in a trade to get Josh Jacobs. The owner that I'm sending Ricky Pearsall to needs a wide receiver too. He's excited about that. So like kind of get the idea of I am rolling Ricky Pearsall as my flex in my high school league. I still like Ricky Pearsall a lot. Sometimes it's just good to not try and make a square peg into a round hole, meaning that Ricky Pearsall may not quite be what I would like him to be, and trying to make excuses for it is not necessarily the best thing. So with Brandon Ayuk, I'm still tracking that he's coming back week 6. There's probably going to be a ramp up period after that. If he is healthy this season, he probably will not be quote unquote healthy until like week 10 out there in fantasy football land. Now, when it was Brandon Ayuk and Debo out there, Brandon Ayuk played the X, which is like the guy in the line of scrimmage that doesn't tend to get moved around a lot, and Debo played the Z, the flanker who gets moved around a little bit more in the formation. Now, there's a lot of stuff here with the 49ers because the 49ers run a lot of 2 running backs. That's Kyle Juszczyk. We'll talk about Kyle Juszczyk here in a second. And you got to remember that when Ayuk comes back, he is likely going to slot back into that X position, and that means Ricky Pearsall is going to probably still stay in the Z. And you got to go, well, why is Ricky Pearsall going to stay in the Z? Because like the skill set of your Jawan Jennings is that big X or that big slot. That's what he's going to slot into, meaning you may get movement of Ayuk and Jennings and Slick Rick, and they may be in that like 60% range, and then none of them are necessarily fantasy viable. That could occur, or you could get the 49ers running a lot of base 2 running backs, and then it's going to be Ayuk and Slick Rick on the field like most of the time. That's how I would see it breaking down the line. And with Brock Purdy eventually coming back, you may get like the higher target share, like 7 to say 10 targets a game. Ricky Pearsall can run those special routes that like some of the other guys wouldn't necessarily do. And that would be the idea behind Ricky Pearsall, especially to start the season, that the entirety of the passing game would go through him. Now, has not necessarily happened, even though with the Kittle injury out there and then Brandon Ayuk and all that stuff, the potential for Jawan Jennings to miss games, it doesn't matter sometimes. As much as I would like to occur, and we're going to talk about Matthew Golden here later on, sometimes the teams are just not going to be friendly to what they should be doing for my fantasy lineup. So just kind of remember that. In this case, I still like Slick Rick. I just think that my expectations of him necessarily moving into that special tier of guys that could win leagues may have to be slightly downgraded because of all this stuff. All right. So when it comes to the running back situation for the 49ers, first and foremost, they're basically all the same. You're looking at 77% snaps going to Christian McCaffrey, nothing to Isaac Garriendo. Jordan James, the 5th rounder, he was a healthy scratch. We have to talk a lot about Kyle Juszczyk. I talked about Kyle Juszczyk potentially taking over the George Kittle role. He had 14% snaps in this game. He goes in the concussion protocol. He did have the one red zone opportunity, I think it was a target, that did not go to Christian McCaffrey. It went to him because he's probably taking over like the George Kittle role in the offense. Then he goes down with that concussion, and then we go over to the tight end room and we see that like Luke Farrell stayed at 58% snaps, and you get that uptick with Tongs up to 79% snaps, 5 for 4 for 31. So he may have ended up moving into that Juszczyk role because they tend to stay in like 21 personnel, like the 2 running backs that are out there. And down the line, they may be a 3 wide receiver team, or they may stay in that 21 personnel. They're probably not going to be in 2 tight ends. That's just not what they run. So if you're wondering about all that stuff, when I break all that stuff down, and again, with Mac Jones, he's probably going to be fine for the toys. He's just not going to be quite the type of distributor that Brock Purdy would be for Slick Rick out there. That's how I would see it overall with all that stuff. Okay, moving on to the Bears. We talk about like Caleb Williams to death. 5 for 27 on the ground. That's really all I care about. 2 passing touchdowns. And then a really good matchup against Dallas. Like I really I've been burned by Caleb Williams before, but like that's a really good matchup, and I might have to put some fab down to have him be my starting quarterback in both my leagues because a lot of quarterbacks went down this week. All right, moving on to the running back room. I talked about this in Chasing the Dragon. I would be chasing Monongahela early, and there's a reason behind that. 41% snaps. Yes, they got blown out. He was in on the first drive. He had red zone opportunity in this game, going over to DeAndre Swift, down to 57% snaps. That's not surprising. And the other thing is, and I've been looking for news on this all day, so I guess Roshan was active. He just didn't play. And the expectation with Roshan is he was going to get the 2 things that we love in fantasy, which is receiving work and goal line work. And if it's going to Monongahela at this point, maybe there's a chance in this one. And the other thing with DeAndre Swift, I'll just bring up real quick, that fumble loss that he did early in the game. So it wasn't just because of the blowout. He was in when the game was still like early. Moving on to potential like Rome Being a league winner in this case, I got to scroll all the way down here. Let's see what I have written down for him. 2 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one of them, 198 air yards. Yeah, I'm really interested in him at this point. So if you can go out and get him, I would. But this is one of the things that we kind of thought about ahead of time as a possibility of him doing. That air yards are probably not going to remain consistent, but 9 and 11 targets probably will. You're probably going to get a little bit of inconsistency. So I probably still would look at him being somewhere in the wide receiver 2 land instead of upgrading from wide receiver 3. The other caveat to this is when you look at like 28 points a week or 28 points last week, remember your scoring settings and my scoring settings may be a little bit different. What I would bring up with this is there's a limited amount of guys that are going to have the ability to have these larger spike weeks. So there are guys that I would like to be rolling in my lineup knowing that they will only win me 5 weeks. They may have the ability to lose me 5 weeks on top of that, but as long as they are in the lineup in the right spot, they have more week-to-week value than some of the other guys out there. We'll talk about like your Kyle Gesicki's and or your Gesicki's and your Dalton Kincaid's, and those guys are out there. We'll talk about those tight ends that probably are disproportionately not valued correctly, even though they're tight end, they can't break your heart. They're going to have the ability to have like massive spike weeks. So that was the biggest thing with Rome. This 198 air yards will likely be there again, and that Dallas opportunity is like looming large. So again, I would probably be aggressive on him if you didn't get him at least for 1 week, and like the owner should, if as long as they're not valuing him as a wide receiver 1, like this would be one of the ones that you could package together and you could probably have a pretty nice trade, especially if they think that they can sell high off of that. Now, Burden 18% snaps, that's down a little bit, and then Oldemine, he was consistent at 44% snaps. Now, tight end room, Loveland, same consistent 53% snaps. Komet was at 90, so that tells you like it's going to be a marathon when it comes to Loveland. All right, Bengals. So Joe Burrow, he looks like he's done until like December with turf toe. Already talked about this with Jake Browning. God tier backup going back to like 2020, what was it, 2023, where he basically won a whole bunch of people leagues, just rolling him as a streaming quarterback. Again, sometimes being okay attached to really good toys is a good thing in fantasy football land. Now, when it says Drake Browning has quarterback 2 value, I think that's not correct. I think Jake Browning is a fringe quarterback 1. And I don't think it has anything to do with matchup. Good matchup, he could have a bad game. Bad matchup, he could go out there and light up your fantasy football lineup. Just kind of, there's a lot of good stuff when it comes to that from a fantasy football perspective. Over running back room, Chase Brown, 71% snaps. All the red zone went to him, scrolling down. And then P. Ryan is consistent, 0 Taj Brooks. That's all you got to know on that one. Wide receiver room, don't have a lot to talk about in this one other than the fact that you did get that spike with Yosivas up to 84% snaps. So we still are looking at the possibility, especially in your deeper leagues, that you may have a wide receiver 3 to be rolling out there in certain matchups. We'll look at that with Yosivas. Now, tight end room, Gesicki was at 52% snaps. Drew Sample led everybody at, or Drew Sample went down to 41% snaps. Sorry, had the wrong notes. And then Noah Fant was down to 25% snaps. So in this case, I talk about like Gesicki and your Dalton Kincaid, some of these guys out there, they're going to have the ability to have specific non-predictive spike weeks that some of these other tight ends are not going to do, and the snap count's not going to have anything to do with it. So, like, if you are in a bind and you want to shoot for the upside, guys like Gesicki are going to be able to do that. I go back to 2024, and you can see, like, week 9 against Vegas, he goes out there and does 25.5 points, 6 for 5 for 100, 2 touchdowns. That's within his range of possibilities on any given week. So, if you're wondering about, like, say, like a Harold Fannin versus your Gesicki, Fannin's going to have a better floor, and Gesicki's going to have a higher ceiling, and sometimes like the good way to win your league is to go after the ceiling and not the floor. So just kind of remember that when we break some of these guys down. Now, moving over to Bills, the Bills absolutely beat down the Jets. It's not even funny like how bad the game was in this case, and I'll just say like running back usage was the same regardless, 47% snaps for Cook. Ray Davis, 27% snaps. That's in line with the uptick because of the beatdown. And then 25% snaps for Ty Johnson. All red zone opportunities, or all of them had red zone opportunities again in this game. Cook led all the running backs in the red zone opportunities again. So that's just the way it goes. Now, talk about like Khalil Shakur. This is in line with his usage in the beatdown. 71% snaps in the shootout. He goes down to 49% snaps in a positive game script for the Bills. And that means everybody else, 51% snaps for Coleman, and 51% snaps for Josh Palmer. Did get a spike with 40% snaps in Elijah Moore. And then also Curtis Samuel was a healthy scratch. Now, I did talk about this with the receiving or the blocking tight end in Jackson Haas. He popped up to 47% snaps. Also, not surprising. Dawson Knox, consistent at 55% snaps. And then your Dalton Kincaid, 48% snaps, did have 6 targets. So that's why I say a guy like Dalton Kincaid will likely have a few 20-point weeks. And it's just going to be, can you predict those weeks when you decide to roll him out? Because he's likely going to eventually wind up on your wire. And outside of like really disgusting leagues where you have to like hold a guy and try and guess like specific matchups that could turn into some type of shootout, and week 14 maybe it could turn into that type of shootout. Like I could see that, knowing what the guy's actual value is going to be. All right, Broncos running back usage remained consistent among all these guys. I'll bring up RJ Harvey so you can stare at him. In this case, all the red zone again went to Dobbins, and Beatty was again being like the third down back, and Jaleel McLaughlin was a healthy scratch. Now, I will just say real quick about Marvin Mims. He was down 36% snaps. Then we'll talk about like Troy Franklin, 83% snaps in this game, 9 for 8 for 89 and a touchdown. 3 red zone opportunities for him, 1 red zone opportunity for Courtland Sutton. He only had 61 air yards. Yeah, I would be buying your Troy Franklin with the possibility you're going to get wide receiver 2 relative to some of the guys out there that are going to be like more wide receiver 3s. Like there may be a little bit more upside to Franklin, especially with the speed, and you may have a better ability to have like a 20 to 30 point spike week with Franklin if it all comes together in a week than like chasing like your AO minors or something like that are out there. All right. The other thing is in your deeper type leagues, not him, Pat Bryant was up to 24% snaps in this game, so that's like encouraging on that one. And then from the tight end room, this is what I was talking about with your Drew Samples, Troutman was at 62% that snaps. That's not surprising. He vultured a touchdown. Evan Ingram, 43% snaps. So again, I think at this point, the tea leaves are telling you what Evan Ingram's going to be. He's probably going to be in line with your Gesicki's and your Dalton Kincaids. The possibility of having massive spike weeks, but on a week-to-week basis, you may get nothing out of him. All right, scrolling down to the Browns. This is one of those things like really surprised with the overall usage of Judkins right now. 27% snaps, 10 for 61, 3 for 3 for 10. He did look really good in this one. Just remember, snap share may go up. Usage may not go up along with it. That would be the one thing I would say about that. If he's available in your league, yeah, probably in RB2. The caveat to this is going to be like how much red zone you're going to get. That means how much touchdowns you're going to get out of him. In general, the late game, they did, this game was 20-10 in the fourth quarter, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and then the Ravens dropped 21 points. So Dylan Sampson, he did salvage his day late with a red zone touchdown. That's how he got there. I would not be surprised that that's what the role between Judkins and Sampson is going to be. And eventually, like, we're still tracking Jerome Ford getting phased out of the offense. And then Rocket Sanders, he was a healthy scratch in this one. And I think that's about all I have to say. Only red zone opportunity went to Sampson in this game. Now, wide receivers, I don't really have anything to talk about other than Isaiah Bond was up to 38% snaps. That's not surprising. And then the equal and opposite reaction, Harold Fanning was down to 63% snaps, did do 5 for 5 for 48 in this game. Nothing about red zone opportunities for the tight ends, if you're wondering about any of that stuff. Moving on to the Buccaneers, in kind of embarrassing game overall, I would just say. For everybody, Bucky Irving stayed consistent 71% snaps in this game. I'm going to scroll down and see 1 red zone opportunity went to him. But again, like sometimes snap share does not equal usage. And in this game, 31% snaps. Rashad White, he did have 2 red zone opportunities. He tugged on one of them, 10 for 65, and then 2 for 2 for 1 in the passing game. So like that's a little interesting down the line. Like probably has more value than we originally thought after last week. But in general, it does still appear that like most of the work is going to go to Bucky. Let's see. And then wide receiver room, I don't really have anything to say on them, so I can move on for them. And I don't really care about the tight ends for the Buccaneers. Let's see, right there. The Cardinals right now, they're going to be like really ugly team. They're not going to be fantasy friendly. It stayed consistent on that one. Connor went down to 55% snaps, 11 for 34, and a touchdown in this game. And you're looking at like Benson, and it's happening. 44% snaps, 3 for 14. More importantly, it's going to be that receiving work, 6 for 4 for 30 in this game. 1 more red zone opportunity for him. Now you're probably looking at him, if some type of receiving work stays consistent, him sneaking into the back end of the RB2 range. And I probably would prefer Benson if this remains somewhat consistent, because you're going to have a higher week-to-week ceiling with Benson versus Connor going on out there. So that's why I say, like, I would probably be trying to get James Conner off my roster at this point, because it's going to happen, and then it's going to get like harder and harder to get rid of James Conner. And looking at James Conner, like, he has had a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Overall, his usage does look okay on paper, but it's going to happen where that flop occurs, and then good luck. So that's how I would see that going on out there. Don't have anything else to say. Like, you're wondering about like your Marvin Harrison shares, I already called this. Like, he's going to be within that like 5 to 8 target range, and then he didn't get the touchdown and blah blah blah, and they still are going to have the ability to win their games, and they don't care about your fantasy football lineup. Tip Riemann, he was out with a foot. That probably is not too fantasy relevant, but like tracking on him to potentially be the cuff for Trey McBride, I do pay attention to certain things like that. All right, Chargers kind of controlled the game against the Raiders that I would see out there. I did see on Twitter them talking about the Chargers are the highest neutral pass rate team, or pass rate over expectation, whatever we want to talk about that. That is going on out there. So, like, yeah, that would remain consistent. And they do have those 3 wide receivers that we would talk about in Ladd and Keenan Allen, doing a 7 for 5 for 61 and a touchdown on 55% snaps. And then Quentin Johnson, remember, good way to win your league is to chase your touchdowns. 60-yard touchdown in this game. So, yeah, that's how it would go. Andre Lambert-Smith was down to 10% snaps in this game, and then a little surprising, 31% snaps for Trey Harris. That's how I would see that overall. Still no Gadsden, and I don't care about the rest of the Chargers tight ends. Running back room, Hampton was at 62% snaps. That's down in this one. There was a fumble in this game that I guess got statistically linked to Herbert, but I bet the coaches would put on him. It was some a little like a 3-tech blew up the play, got in the backfield, caused the fumble. They may put it on him, and 4 red zone opportunities went to him in this game. Najee was up to 34% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity also. So yeah, I still would probably, I would be buying Hampton if the owner is getting scared, but I can also understand getting rid of Hampton now while you still think he has a certain amount of value. Primarily the reason why I would be getting rid of Hampton would be if the Chargers remain some type of higher volume passing team. That was kind of not something that we were expected going into the season. If they're going to do that, then Hampton and Najee's value is going to be about touchdowns and receiving work, and if that's not occurring, then their overall value is going to go down. All right, sip of water. Let's go to the Chiefs. Once again, some of those offenses that we think are going to be good are going to be bad. In this case, this is one of those offenses that I thought was going to be bad, that remains bad. Patrick Mahomes is basically right there, the rushing game for the Chiefs, and that's also the reason why he's having like fantasy relevant weeks. So like, just remember that when it comes down to it. Running back wise, 58% Isaiah Pacheco, 10 for 22, 2 for 1 for 7. In this one, I got to scroll down to my notes. 1 red zone opportunity for him. Kareem Hunt did have 2 red zone opportunity in this one. He did fumble. It was not lost in this game. So like, I in general, I would say like if there was a guy that maybe I want more, and I don't want either of these guys, it would be Hunt, if I was to guess on that. But I could also see that fumble may cause him to lose a little bit more work in this game overall. And then Brashard Smith was at 8% snaps. All right, and then I think Mitchell was still a healthy scratch. Wide receivers, like, all I gotta say is like, 16 targets went down to 5 for Hollywood. His snap count went down to 75% snaps. Juju was at 70% snaps, only 3 targets, and then Thornton went all the way up to 75% snaps, 5 for 2 for 59 in this game. 168 air yards. So yeah, maybe if you're going to chase that spike someplace in this offense until, like, you know, if Worthy's out and this, that, and the other, like, Thornton would be the guy to go chasing at this point with all those guys. Tight end room, equal and opposite reaction. You did get Noah Gray going up to 65% snaps with 5 targets. Again, that would put him very much fringe in your deeper leagues as a startable tight end. And I don't care about Kelsey. So, like, you do you when it comes to him. Colts running backs, you got full bell cow Jonathan Taylor in this game, 93% snaps. Like, I think I wrote down in this one, there may be like a number of league winners coming off the Colts this year. Danny Dimes, Jonathan Taylor and then Ty Warren may all be league winners at this rate. So like 93% snaps, that's all you got to know when it comes to Jonathan Taylor. Danny Dimes, this would have been a predictive bench against the Broncos. So now we're talking about like your ability to roll out Danny Dimes on a week-to-week basis. I already thought probably should have been stashed after week 1, and at this point, like I probably would just be rolling him, even though the 1-yard touchdown runs are probably not going to be the most consistent. The offense may be good enough, and there may be enough toys that like don't need to know how the sausage is made sometimes. All right, moving on, wide receivers. Let's see. Downs was down to 58% snaps in this game, and again, the Colts game with the Broncos was like all over the place. I thought it was a good call when it came to the field goal at the end of the game, how the Colts were able to pull it out. So in this case, 58% snaps for Josh Downs, but he did have 8 targets. In this one, you can see, like, I think that's going to be relative what he is. There's going to be weeks that he's always going to have low snap counts. It's just going to be a matter, like, there are going to be, like, your Josh Downs weeks. So he's going to have a certain amount of value as that, like, large spike week type of wide receiver 3. Let's see. Mitchell in his 10% snaps did have 4 targets. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the Colts think of him overall with the Western wide receivers. Alec Pierce was at 90% snaps also. And then Ty Warren, 93% snaps, 7 targets. There you go, 79, or 4 for 79. League winner. Moving on to the Redskins. So Jaden Daniels, it says day to day. I've seen other places where it's going to be multiple weeks with an MCL going on out there. So you might have to monitor this. If you're wondering about Marcus Mariota, yeah, he has the nimbly bimbly. I just don't think you're going to get the passing volume to go along with it. So you're going to get the floor. You're probably not going to get the ceiling when it comes down to this. When it comes to his ability to keep the toys on track, it probably downgrades all the receivers. It probably would still keep like the possibility that we're going to get like league-winning Bill, Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt, because of the Austin Eckler Achilles injury. He went on IR with what looks like a torn Achilles. All right, and then I would imagine this week you may get like Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt going all the way up to 60% snaps, and then you're going to get C-Rod at like 20, and then McNichols at like 20. This would be a week that like I would, if I had my Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt shares, and I'm going to roll them as like a flex or an RB2, to get ahead of the potential spike instead of just waiting that one extra week to see it happen. Like I could see that thought process of just saying like, yeah, he's going to get a majority of the work coming out of the gate because of this. I'm not so concerned with the 22% snaps that he had against the Packers. The Packers completely controlled the game. I actually watched tape. They completely controlled the game from the beginning. Austin Eckler was on the field. I can imagine that because they weren't going to get a lot going. The Packers defense is probably going to be elite this year. They weren't going to get a lot going, and they're probably going to use Eckler more in that like receiving pass blocking role that they were in the game. That's why I would generally see they could not get on track to use Bill in the role that they probably wanted to use him. That's how I would see it. And then part of what makes me think that's probably the case is 23% snaps going to Jeremy McNichols. If he's a dirty work guy, they're not necessarily going to just go like, hey, we want to put Bill in certain trustworthy positions. And that's why I would see like Jeremy McNichols, if anything, his snaps are going to remain consistent, if not go up. And it just depends with like C-Rod at that point down the line. But there's going to be enough there that I would be rolling out Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt. I may roll him out if I don't get a trade done as my RB2 in my main money league. All right. Wide receivers don't have a lot to say. Noah Brown, he is out right now with whatever is going on with him. I didn't even write that down. I don't care. As a wide receiver, what makes it more interesting to me is their 4th round draft pick is Jalen Lane. He is more of a vertical slot only type guy. He was up to 52% snaps. So that's a little bit more interesting to me, but you probably got to be in deep enough leagues with Debo doing Debo things and Scary Terry out there also. And then with the injury to Jaden Daniel at this point, like that's the other thing. So that 23% snaps increase for Luke McCaffrey doesn't matter because of Jaden Lane. And I want to scroll down, look at all this stuff. And then Ertz probably was the beneficiary of the injuries that are out there, and John Bates being out a little more of the blocking tight end. So Zach Ertz, he went up to 90% snaps. That is probably the better role right now. Is Zach Ertz, at least for another week where he's going to get like the higher volume, as long as Bates and Noah Brown remain out. Dallas right now, we could guess that this was going to turn into an absolute shootout. So sometimes like the stuff that we think we're going to be wrong on week 1, we're actually right about, and the Dallas Dallas defense is as bad as we think that they're going to be. It turns into an absolute shootout. This Bears game does predict to turn into another shootout if you're going to be stringing your quarterbacks this week. Javonte, yeah, league winner at the price that he's going at. We can also talk about the fact my water bottle's in the way if you're wondering why I keep doing stuff. League winner, he did have 2 red zone opportunities, but, and here's your but when it comes down to everything, Miles Sanders at 22% snaps, he did have 2 red zone opportunities there. He did tug on one of those. Yeah, you're looking at a cuff when it comes to Miles Sanders, so potential road to win leagues with Miles Sanders too. Right now, we're still tracking that like Jadon Blue is going to be out for the foreseeable future. Moving on to wide receiver room, George Pickens, he did have 4 red zone opportunities in this game. He did tug on one of those out there. Let's see. And then Jake Ferguson, 73% snaps, 12 for 9 for 78 in that shootout against the Giants. And I can imagine that saying somewhat consistent against the Bears. I'm just convincing myself to roll Jake Ferguson and Caleb Williams this week. All right. Dolphins, back and forth game with the Pats. So we talk about like overall usage. Main thing with Devon Achane, I had to like look at this twice. 93% snaps. So he is like the number 1 wide receiver, I guess, when we talk to the Dolphins. So if they can get any type of running game going, like legendary outcome season is in the cards. It just depends on like how bad that they're going to be overall. 8 for 10 for 92 and a touchdown in this one. Ollie Gordon right now is still projected to be the cuff, 12% snaps. No Jalen Wright still. It says logs practice Tuesday 6 hours. So like that was 6 hours ago. If you're wondering on that one, I imagine that if there is an injury to Achane, I'm not entirely sure that you're going to get the value of Ollie Gordon, because if they can't run the football, he probably is not going to be the number 1 wide receiver for the Dolphins. If you're wondering about that at this point, and then other guys to be looking at is Malik Washington, limited practice with a thumb, but he did have a return touchdown. So like there is some special usage that you may be able to get out of him if we can get some type of like consistent wide receiver 3 floor out of him. And then I don't care about Darren Waller, but he's still out. Logs a limited practice Tuesday, if you're wondering. All right, Eagles. I did talk about Eagles after week 1 when they beat the Cowboys. Like they're just going to play ugly games and they're going to win them. If you're wondering about all that stuff that's out there. The other thing is Will Shipley was out with the ribs. A.J. Dillon is going to be your dirty work back. None of that has changed. Nothing with Bigsby if you're wondering about like usage with those guys. Wide receivers I don't really care about at this point because of they're just not throwing. Dallas Goedert was out week 2 with a knee. Grant Calcaterra steps up 88% snaps. So, but if they were throwing, I would care. They ain't throwing. Maybe you're going to get a little bit of throwing against the Rams. At this point, I doubt it. If they're just going to go out there and play ugly and win your football games. Scrolling down to the Falcons. Ugly beatdown of the Vikings is what I have written down on this one. So, like, this is another one of those games like the Saints. Teams are not going to necessarily, if they're well coached, they're not going to go out and allow a bad team to beat them. And with J.J. McCarthy, and I did see a tweet out there in the Twitterverse that said that basically, like, J.J. McCarthy was going to get benched for the 4th quarter, and Justin Jefferson had to go up to Kevin O'Connell and say, like, if you want to ruin this guy's career, do that. So when we get to the Vikings, just kind of remember that. When we talk about what the Falcons did in the game, they didn't have to do anything to necessarily try and win the game. They just had to try not to lose the game. So if you're going to be rolling out your Michael Penix shares, it may have to be like weeks that we can maybe guess that they're going to actually have to play real football. Tyler Algier, 33% snaps in this one. He did vulture a touchdown on 16 for 76. So he is a league-winning cuff. If you're wondering about all that stuff, some of his usage is going to remain consistent. He will vulture rushing touchdowns. So later on in the season, he will turn into a desperation RB2. Bijan, 65% snaps, 22 for 143, 5 for 3 for 25. Yeah, like you knew what you're getting with Bijan. Giants, I will start off by saying Russell Wilson, the 450 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, we could say that this was predictable because the Dallas defense is as bad as we thought they were going to be. That's all we need to know on that one. So, like, yeah, we can start rolling out like every single quarterback that goes up against the Dallas Cowboys defense, and then any expectation that Jackson Dart is necessarily going to be coming in anytime soon is probably a weak push down because of the performance that Rush put on in this game overall. Running back room, so yeah, if you can somehow get a hold of your Cam Scattaboo, he jumped to 52% snaps, 11 for 45 and a touchdown, 3 for 2 for 14. Did see some of the pass blocking reps on him. I will say willing is a good way to express what he was doing out there. Scrolling down to the Giants. All 6 red zone opportunities went to Scattaboo. That's pretty much the long and short of that story. Tyrone Tracy was down to 42% snaps, and the biggest news out of all this, 6% snaps, Devin Singletary. Yeah, it's there. I imagine you're going to get 60 to 70% Scattaboo in the offense, and he's going to get the trustworthy work. Some of that's like really valuable. That's passing work, and that's going to be the goal line work. And then you're going to have a certain amount of design work for Tyrone Tracy because of the athleticism. And if Devin Singletary, the two things that, the one thing that he can't do is be athletic. The other thing that, if they're not using him in that trustworthy role, he's just going to be phased out. Not going to be surprised that like he's a healthy scratch. Going into week 3. Wide receiver room, I will just say this, like this is funny. 267 air yards for Malik Neighbors. Moving on to Wan'Dale Robinson. So I bring up Neighbors' air yards in this game. Wan'Dale Robinson had 168 air yards. He usually is lucky to get like 12 air yards in a game. 168. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm not particularly interested in the Kansas City matchup or the Charger matchup, but like, yeah, there's enough there that if this offense has gone vertical, then he becomes very interesting to me down the line. So like, this was an after waivers, probably stashed more than anything else, unless you're in like your deep enough leagues, that you really got to be chasing these guys, because I think he's going to stay in the wide receiver 3 range, but there may be more upside to him than initially I would be expecting it. Tight end room, Theo Johnson, 84% snaps this one, 5 for 4 for 34 in this one, 2 red zone opportunities. I bring this up because how consistent the script is going to be for the Giants going forward, but you are kind of flirting with the possibility of Theo Johnson weeks in this offense right now. Jaguars in this one, don't have a lot to say. Let's see, a shootout with the Bengals that they lost, and I'm not going to get into whether or not like Trevor Lawrence is good or bad at football. Travis Etienne, this is a little surprising. His snaps didn't necessarily, and Sleeper's just not going to be helpful right now. His snaps did not go down. I think he was at like 61 or 66% snaps. I did write it down. His usage remained consistent. 66% snaps, 5 red zone carries, 2 red zone targets. He tugged on one of them. That's all you got to know. Tootin's snaps did go up to 25% snaps, 8 for 42 in this game. 1 red zone carry, 1 red zone target. He tugged on one of them. Yeah, he should be picked up at this point. Regardless of if there is, regardless of whether or not he eats into ETN, which right now I would not be expecting because of the consistent usage week to week. You probably are looking at some type of cuff when it comes down to him, and you are looking at down the line, like if he's getting red zone opportunities, the possibility that you're going to get some type of 40-degree out of him, 40-degree day when it comes down to him. Now, the other thing is LaQuint Allen, who's probably going to be some type of receiving back. He did have a red zone carry in this game. So that would be the other thing that makes me say maybe they're going to continue to eat into ETN. I think ETN's role is relatively safe, but they do like these other 2 running backs. Wide receivers, I don't have a lot to say with Brian Thomas. I saw some Twitter stuff about like if he's injured or if there's character concerns that there were with him supposedly when he was coming out of college. What I will talk about is Travis Hunter in this place, down to 59% snaps, 6 for 3 in this game. Also, one of the things I will say that I did see on Twitter that people were pointing out that he still doesn't even know where to line up in the offense. So like that kind of tells me certain things. Tim Patrick was at 17% snaps in this in the game. I think he had a red zone opportunity to go along with it. Where's he at? Tim Patrick right there. And then De'Ami Brown was at 80% snaps, 7 for 5 for 57, and a touchdown. That may actually be the guy that I want the most in this game. 3 red zone opportunities that he had. And then Parker Washington is still really good at football. Probably the guy that should be on the field. 24% snaps, 5 for 5 for 76 in this game. So, like, yeah, that's why I track guys like him. It's bad coaching, should be playing. And then Brenton Strange, I don't have anything in this game. 90% snaps, 5 targets is what I have written down. If you're going to be in that type of range of chasing these guys down, not going to be a shootout against Houston, I imagine. Maybe you'll get into a little bit of a shootout with the 49ers. All right, Jets. So they got beat down by the Bills, and you see like 62% snaps for Justin Fields. He went into the concussion protocol with the 62% snaps, 11 for 3 for 27, 5 for 49 in this game, 2 fumbles, 1 lost. I did bring this up last week, so like, when you're right, you're right. You're going to have the ability with Justin Fields for him to go out and compete with anybody in the league. You're also going to have the ability to have Justin Fields basically like lose you your week rolling him out there. So like, buyer beware when it comes to Justin Fields shares. I would actually say that there's a possibility that Tyrod Taylor is an upgrade to the offense with the toys at this point because of the consistency. Like, he goes out there 38% snaps, 11 for 7 for 56, and does get a touchdown in this one. Wide receiver or running back room right now. I'm going to scroll down my notes. 64% snaps for Breece in this game overall. I don't have any red zone opportunities for him. Braylon Allen down at 19% snaps. Both red zone opportunities went to him. That's why I said, like, I really didn't understand why people were praising Breece after week 1. Sometimes the numbers don't lie. And then Isaiah Davis was at 21% snaps in this game. Wide receiver room. Let's see. Alan Lazard actually played in this game. He's at 47%. Where's he at? Someplace right there. 47% snaps, no target. Not surprising how bad they were. Tyler Johnson, he jumped all the way up to 96% snaps, only 1 target in this game. And then Arian Smith, the rookie, he was at 47% snaps. And if you're wondering about like Garrett Wilson, it was the ugly day for everybody involved. Tight end room, the only guy we're kind of tracking on is Mason Taylor, down to 72% snaps, 2 for 1 for 5. If the offense is going to be this terrible. And then Jeremy Ruckert vultured a touchdown there. Lions, absolute beatdown that they were involved with. Where's he at? Jared Goff, because of the toys, certain guys are going to have the ability to spike in a way that other guys don't. So I may have run my mouth when it comes to Jared Goff, but he's probably one of the few guys out there that does have the ability to go out there and just on any given week and throw 5 touchdown passes because of the weapons that he has. And then not a lot to say about the running backs for the Lions, stuff that we didn't already know. Sun Guy goes out there and goes off 11 for 9 for 115, 3 touchdowns. Hopefully you weren't like me and had to play him this week overall. If you're wondering about like Tesla, 29% snaps up. And then JMO, 88% snaps. He's still going to be in that boom bust. 3 range, 4 for 2 for 108 and a touchdown. Scroll down here. Not a lot to say about any of those. Packers, moving on to them. Already talked about the fact that the Packers are likely going to be an elite level defense. I watched the game on purpose just to see if their defense is that good. Yes. Micah Parsons is changing the defense because almost every single play that he's on the field, he wrecks the play. So that's just how I would view the offense. Or I would view the offense through the lens of the defense really being able to mess up scripts because like they may not have to score and they may be in really good situations to score on top of that. Like it's going to be like really interesting from a fantasy perspective to try and predict anything on a week-to-week basis. You may have like Jordan Love throwing like 4 touchdown passes, but only having like 100 yards passing because the defense puts him in like really good spots. He could also have like 100 yards passing and no passing touchdowns because Josh Jacobs gets 4 rushing touchdowns that week because of how good the Packers defense is. Now, running backs, before I praise Josh Jacobs any further, 78% snaps, 23 for 84 and a touchdown. He's attached to a really good offense. But, and here's your but here, Chris Brooks, 19% snaps, 4 for 3 for 27. And I went and looked. Yeah, he's probably the 3rd down back for the Packers at this point. So that ceiling for Josh Jacobs, that's lowered. And on top of that, Josh Jacobs ends up being a very touchdown-depending running back, but he is going to be attached to a really good offense at this point. And then Emmanuel Brooks, 7% snaps in this game. Now, wide receivers, what we're here to find out about. So Jaden Reed, he's out right now with a clavicle, and it says gets his foot worked on too. I didn't even see that. So he got his foot done. He got his clavicle done. Who knows how long he's going to be out at this point. Dobbs, he was at 74% snaps. He did get a red zone touchdown, I believe. Wicks was at 54% snaps in this game. Savon Williams, they did Wildcat stuff with him. They were running jet sweeps to him and Matthew Golden in the game, if you're wondering. And then Heath, where's he at? Heath in this game, 32% snaps, had a very good catch. The reason why I bring up him having a very good catch in the game is because if you have a limited amount of opportunities and you are able to return the trust that the coaches gave you, that tends to mean that your snap share and your opportunities are going to remain consistent at this point. So I bring all of this up so we can talk about Matthew Golden. And the part of the reason why I watched the Packers game was not just to see how good their defense was, because this was a predictive bench with the Packers defense going up against the Redskins, but the Packers defense just went out there and controlled the entire game the whole time. Matthew Golden will win leagues, but this was another one of those square pegs going in a round hole. The reason why I bring this up is because I can try and will this to happen. He looks really good on tape. I saw all the Twitter metrics that are saying like he's getting open. His separation is elite. It's the best. It doesn't matter. He could have had 2 touchdowns in the game. Jordan Love underthrew one. He overthrew another one. The Jaden Reed injury probably really affects him until Christian Watson comes back or Jaden Reed comes back, because it looked like they were using his speed to clear everything out for all the other receivers underneath in the game, including Tucker Kraft. Now, if they get the offense up and functioning, and we're talking like week 10 down the line, going into your playoffs, yeah, I could see that he is one of those like league-winning MVP playoff type of guys. Unfortunately, you're going to have to hold on to him until we get to that point in the season, if you're going to get that at all. Otherwise, like, sometimes chasing this is a good way to just burn a roster spot. I have no idea when they're ever going to use him. His 2 opportunities that he had in the game, besides like the 2 touchdowns that didn't happen, so they didn't go into your fantasy scorecard, were 2 jet sweeps that he had. And all the Twitter stuff with him, I don't really care about. Tucker Kraft, 91% snaps, 6 for 7 for 124, and a touchdown. This one, that was a red zone opportunity. Yeah, league winner. We don't need to talk much more about that. My co-manager got an earful from me because he wanted TJ Hawkinson instead in this one. And then Luke Musgrave, again, watching tape on these guys, he is a league-winning cuff. So the moment that Kraft goes down, yeah, you're rolling Luke Musgrave. They are so good on offense that they're screwing with other teams because they can use Luke Musgrave as a clear out at tight end because of how fast he is relative to linebackers and safeties. It's kind of fun to watch how their offense functions. And they were able to take advantage of his athleticism, 2 for 32. They were just playing games. They don't care. That's like the Lions last year. All right, moving on to the Panthers. So this was ugly early, and then the Panthers turned it into a game late. 55 for 35, 328, 3 touchdowns. That's what I would like to see the Panthers be on a week-to-week basis. But it did look like he was ugly early on, yet again, against the Cardinals. Chuba Hubbard, 74% snaps in this one. I have to scroll down to talk about them. 1 red zone target he tugged on in this one, and we have another league-winning cuff. 29% snaps. Rico, he did have 2 red zone carries in this game that I wrote down. So yeah, that's how much they like him, is they're giving him some of the higher value touches in the game. And again, this went down to turnover on downs by the Panthers late in the game. Wide receiver room, Tet doing Tet things, 85% snaps, 10 for 6 for 100. 2 red zone opportunity, 82 air yards on the 10 targets. One of the things I will say that I don't particularly like is I would like to see on 10 targets higher air yards, because it just means that he's not getting shot plays. So that lowers his overall ceiling at this point if they're not trying to just, huck up 150 ball a game to him to put them closer to like 150 air yards a game. But 10 targets, nothing to stick at. And the other thing is, with the usage overall, touchdowns will come. Leggett, 80% snaps, 8 targets, 1 reception, -2 yards in this one. 3 red zone opportunities, only 49 air yards on his 8 opportunities. Hunter Renfrow, 81% snaps, 9 for 7 for 42, 2 touchdowns, 5 red zone targets. So now we're starting to talk about, like, if we can predict a shootout, maybe the Falcons are going to be that game, maybe the Dolphins, maybe the Cowboys. Now we're starting to talk about a guy that has higher wide receiver 3 outcomes, because he's going to have the ability to have a 40-degree day because of red zone usage down the line. Now, the other one, because this turned into, going back to the 55 pass attempts that Bryce Young had in this game, Jatavion Sanders, 66% snaps, 9 for 7 for 54, 4 red zone targets. So chasing upside with some of these tight ends versus the possibility of getting your floor. There's another one right now that we can talk about. Like, they were targeting him when he got in the red zone. All right. Patriots in this one. Here was your Drake May. This is why you went out and you got your Drake Mays. 2 passing touchdowns, but he nimbly bimbly his way into the end zone in this one. And I was, again, my co-manager was getting an earful from me in this game because we went up against the Sun God and Tucker Craft and Drake May in the game. Was not particularly happy about that. Travion Henderson, 32% snaps. His targets and rushing went down in this game relative to Ramondre. We'll talk about Ramondre here in a second. Did see the tape on him. He does look a little overwhelmed in pass blocking, which is generally going to mean that, like, I am still going to be waiting before I be rolling him out there. He is a marathon. He is not a sprint when it comes to if you were drafting your Henderson shares out there. I'm a little disappointed. I would generally like to see a straight progression of usage, but like I can definitely see he's going to take a step back this week overall. Ramondre, this one, 55-yard reception in the game, 65% snaps, 11 for 5, 5 for 5 for 88 in this one. Ramondre did have 2 red zone opportunities. Henderson did have 1, and Gibson did have 1. And I did see that Gibson got in the game before Henderson. Wide receiver room, Diggs was up to 52% snaps on that snap count. Overall, it does appear that his role is going to be like shorter, trustworthy win guy. Think of like old man Keenan Allen in this offense. Butte, hopefully 72% snaps, 1 for 1 for 16, and a touchdown. That was a red zone opportunity. Obviously, that's all you got. Sometimes when you're wrong on that one. Let's see. Mac Hollins, 65% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity in this game, and he tugged on it. Kyle Williams at 17% snaps. Who's the guy? Pop Douglas. Pop Douglas all the way down to 25. So there you go. If you're wondering about what the wide receiver room is going to look like, right now they're trusting Mac Hollins to be on the field. And then your tight ends, 85% snaps, 3 for 1 for 9, and equal and opposite reaction. There's your Austin Hooper, 62% snaps, 3 for 3 for 38. If you're wondering about all that stuff, and then your ability to predict the offense at this point, the Miami game, I'd be rolling them, like Pittsburgh, maybe not. Carolina, probably. Buffalo, you can be looking at that being higher scoring. Ugly script against the Saints. So, like, upside, if you're going to be chasing that upside in certain games that could be uglier scripts versus not uglier scripts when it comes to some of the Patriots toys. Raiders in this one, Chargers just control it from the beginning. 3 interceptions for Geno Smith. So, like, sometimes when you're wrong, you're wrong. If you think you're going to get league-winning Geno Smith. Ashton Jeanty was at 56% snaps, 11 for 43, 4 for 3 for 1 in the passing game. Do have some stuff with the running backs to be talking about in this one. All the red zone went to Jeanty. There were a lot of online issues in the game. I did watch some of the highlights on it. If you're wondering, Zamir White was at 30% snaps this game. We did see a Dylan Labe sighting, 17% snaps, 2 for 2 for 17. Why I bring this up in this game was not necessarily out of hand. You can see right there, 20-9 in the game. Is some of what we thought we were going to get with Jeanty was like full bell cow. And if we're not going to get the receiving work from him, that's going to downgrade him. So now he becomes more of a volume-based, touchdown-dependent RB2. Just going to say that's maybe what it's looking like right now, especially the Dylan Labe stuff really, really concerns me more than anything else. And then Zamir White, is if he's the cuff, and again, more of the receiving work going to Zamir White. That's I'll just say that. Let's see, wide receivers, I don't think I have anything written down when it comes to them. And then Brock Bowers in this game, 77% snaps, 8 for 5 for 38. Michael Mayer, 34% snaps in this game. That's a little surprising to me. And then Jacoby Myers, 93% snaps, 12 targets. I don't think I looked them up from yesterday. 81% snaps for Thornton, 4 targets. Trey Tucker, 91% snaps, 8 targets. If you're wondering about all that stuff. And then Beck was at 7% snaps. That remains consistent. All right, moving on to the Rams. And one of the things I'll just say real quick, I was seeing that like Puka and Devontae Adams are like 30-35% target shares. That's ridiculous. So like, if you think that's going to remain somewhat consistent, snap shares on Puka, 69% snaps. That doesn't necessarily bother me if he's going to get like 35% target shares out there. Devontae Adams, 13 targets on his 80% snaps. in this game. Whittington, 64% snaps, 2 for 2 for 42. One thing I'll talk about with Whittington, he is like a blocking wide receiver, like when they had Skoranek. That's going to be a little bit interesting down the line. I can see that remaining consistent. And then Tutu remains consistent, 43% snaps. All right, running backs. A little bit to talk about with the running backs when it comes to the Rams right now. Kyron was down to 70% snaps in this game. 3 red zone opportunities, or 3 red zone carries, 1 red zone target. Probably would be selling him right now, and that's because of Blake Corum in this game. He goes up to 30% snaps in this one. 3 red zone carries. He tugged on one of them, and then I did see that he had a drive at the end of the game all to himself. No Kyron Williams. So we're in like league-winning cuff range when it comes to this guy. And not only that, like, would not be surprising that we get like 40% snaps or 50% snaps when it comes to Corum down the line. Whatever we were waiting on with stuff. It does look like Hunter did, actually become active in this one. When it comes to these guys, and then tight end room, I don't care about. Higbee was up to 75% snaps in this game, and then Ferguson did get 7% snaps, the second rounder. All right, with Colby Parkinson out. Ravens in this one, I wrote down some stuff with them. Gotta look over at my notes. Cleveland game, like I said, like 21 points in the fourth quarter. If you're wondering, like the game was relatively close up until then. 4 touchdown passes from Lamar Jackson. Running back room, Derrick Henry. I will just say this is part of the reason why I tend to stay away from these guys. If they don't have a receiving floor and they don't get touchdowns, 11 for 23 when it comes to Derrick Henry. Am I concerned about that? No. Can he still win leagues? Yes. I just say, like, this is my process of why I stay away from guys like this. He could have, 15 more fantasy or 14 more fantasy relevant weeks and win you leagues. But I will just say, like, why I tend to stay away from guys like this in their offenses. Hill in the game, 39% snaps. Keaton Mitchell was still a healthy scratch, if you're wondering. Wide receiver room, yeah, Zay Flowers is really starting to get my attention. 79% snaps, 11 targets in the game. I don't know how much I would necessarily trust this. I have rolled Zay Flowers in leagues before, and then when I do roll him, he does have the flop with him and Bateman or Mark Andrews or something like that. DeAndre Hopkins doing DeAndre Hopkins things. 18% snaps, 2 for 2 for 64 and a touchdown. He's just going to score touchdowns on his limited snaps, I guess. What he's going to do. And then Mark Andrews, 80% snaps, still waiting on Isaiah Likely to come back. Let's see, Saints are going to be up next. Still staying away from the Saints with your roster in this one. Spencer Rattler, 3 touchdown passes. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Running back room, Alvin Kamara, 86% snaps, pretty much full bell cow in this one. Didn't write anything else down. Neal's snap share was 0 this week. And then Kendrick Miller, 15% snaps. So, like, if you're trying to guess the handcuff, I guess, attached to a bad offense. Chris Olave on his 10 targets. He had 122 air yards this week, 6 for 54. So I'm just going to say, like, Spencer Rattler maybe a little erratic down the field. Rashid Shaheed in this game, 2 red zone opportunities on his 70% snaps. He tugged on one of them. Don't care about Brandon Cooks, if you're wondering, 68% snaps. In this one, Juwan Johnson, when you're wrong, 96% snaps. 9 for 5 for 49, and a red zone touchdown. All right, Seahawks are going to be up next. Running back room. This gets, like, weird. So Kenneth Walker down to 35% snaps, and when you're looking at, like, your Judkins or your Jalen Warrens out there, he does 13 for 105 on his limited snap share. Touchdown, 1 for 1 for 13. And then on the other side, like Zach Charbonnet, he does do 15 carries on his 55% snaps, only 10 rushing yards. I don't know if I would trust anybody in this offense. Probably would still be rolling Kenneth Walker as your RB2 or your flex. And then Zach Charbonnet would probably still be like a desperation range when it comes down to these two guys. You're going to get burned with Kenneth Walker, but I would probably be chasing the upside when it comes down to these guys. The other thing that I wrote down, the fullback, not that it's going to be fantasy relevant, 42% snaps. That's what they're running with their 21 personnel most of the game. JSN, because of the game script right here with the Steelers. 65% snaps, but again, 10 targets in this one. Cooper Kupp, 69% snaps, 9 for 7 for 90. If they get into a game where they got to throw a little bit more, you can kind of get that idea behind that, how it's going to shake out. Torrey Horton, 40% snaps, 2 for 4 for 32. He did have a touchdown overall. AJ Barner, outside of snap share, probably never going to be really fantasy relevant. 89% snaps, 3 for 2 for 26, and a touchdown in this one. And then we did get Elijah Arroyo sighting, 40% snaps, 3 for 2 for 31. And again, this is another one of those games that turned into a little bit more of scoring than we thought it was going to be in the game, 31-17 against the Steelers. All right, Steelers. So the main one, Jalen Warren, 14 for 48 on his 58% snaps, 4 for 4 for 86. Really pretty catch and run when it came down to him. In this one, we're scrolling down. All three red zone opportunities went to him. One red zone opportunity went to Kenneth Gainwell on his 42% snaps. And then, if you're wondering, Caleb Johnson at 3% snaps. And then I did hear that they're relieved of kick return journeys in the game to go along with this. Calvin Austin remained consistent at 90% snaps in this game, 4 for 1 for 25. Roman Wilson was at 35% snaps, slight uptick when it comes to him. Tight end room, pretty consistent, 50% snaps when it comes to Freiermuth. Jonnu Smith, 56% snaps, 4 for 4 for 27. He's focal point of the offense. That's not particularly surprising. Texans in that ugly game against the Buccaneers, they just have O-line problems. They're probably going to have O-line problems all season long. Nick Chubb in this one, 53% stops, 12 for 43, and a touchdown. That was late. Salvaged his day, 2 for 2 for 29. That was early. Woody Marks in this one, 27% stops, 3 for 14, 1 for 1 for 37. Damian Pierce was a healthy scratch to go along with it. And the reason why I bring all this stuff up, both red zone went to Nick Chubb, is I don't see the point of chasing Woody Marks. He may have higher week-to-week upside than Nick Chubb. If you're going to be chasing a guy that could rip one off at any given time, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be attached to the offense in any meaningful way as long as Nick Chubb is doing about 50% snaps and getting the red zone. That's what I got to say on that one. He may end up getting design passing work. Dare, who fumbled last week, 20% snaps, no receiving work in this game. So I can maybe see that occurring down the line when it comes to Woody Marks. And then with Nico, the rest of the wide receivers right now, I don't really care. Nico, 9 targets, 3 for 52, and a touchdown on 90% snaps, and then just disappeared because they're just getting mauled on the offensive line. Let's see. Titans. I did watch some of Cam Ward again. He is better than I was expecting him to be. I will just say that I was pretty negative on him. Overall, passing touchdown. Very interesting passing touchdown. He rolled to the sideline, threw across his body to the far other pylon in the end zone to A.O. Minor. Not a very advisable throw, but he dropped the football in the bucket. It was pretty. And then again, I do like him a little bit more in the pocket than I thought he was going to be. It's just I don't know when it's going to be fantasy relevant. If you're wondering, not a real football channel. Tony Pollard, 89% snaps, 20 for 92, 1 target. That's what bothers me a little bit more. Lack of receiving work and lack of red zone opportunities to go along with it. And you're waiting on Tajay Spears to come back from IR at this point. And then wide receiver room, 86% snaps, Calvin Ridley, 6 targets. A.O. Minor, he did have 73% snaps in this game. I wrote down his air yards, 69 air yards compared to Calvin Ridley's 71 in the game. And if this remains consistent, he's going to have to be highly efficient on limited opportunities. And there's very few guys that can do that. They're usually attached to better offenses with better quarterbacks than you're going to see from your Cam Wards at this point. The other thing that I would bring up with A.O. Minor is that touchdown catch is not something that I would expect that Cam Ward will repeat on a week-to-week basis because it was essentially a scramble drill. It was not a design shot to A.O. Minor. All right. And then Chig was still chigging about at 76% snap, 6 targets. If you're wondering about that thing down the line. Finally, to finish all of this off so I can get back to other stuff, is the Vikings. So I will just say like JJ McCarthy likely out at least 2 weeks with an ankle. Like I said, I would imagine that may not be an ankle. That may be you know he was benched for being not good at football. That's what I will say. Real quick. So with the offense, if it turns a little bit back to its higher passing or higher passing volume with Carson Wentz, especially in a game like the Bengals, yeah, I could see like a Russ type of outcome when it comes to the Vikings and the Bengals. If you have the cojones to be rolling out your Carson Wentz, and I might. Oh, and they did sign Desmond Ritter. If you're wondering about that, I did see that today. Aaron Jones placed on IR with that hamstring, so you are looking at full bell cow Jordan Mason at this point. If you're wondering about that, again, like they got to get in the red zone, and I don't know how much actual design receiving work that you're going to get out of them. I don't think they need to be rolling Jordan Mason as the design receiving work. I want to see if they have Ham. Ham is the fullback. He's on IR. He would be the guy that they normally would bring in to do the pass blocking rep. So I don't know who is going to be the guy. They did sign Cannon Akers. I didn't even see that today. Practice squad down the line, but I don't know who they're going to bring in to do the pass blocking reps at this point. I don't know that much about Xavier Scott. If you're wondering about that stuff, Carson Wentz coming in, probably significant upgrade to Justin Jefferson. If the owner of Justin Jefferson is concerned, yeah, you can attack that. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be right on that. He might stay in that wide receiver 3 range, even with Carson Wentz, but you can be looking at doing that overall. Jalen Naylor, 100% snaps. He's going to stay in that like desperation wide receiver 3 range. Thielen, 81% snaps. Again, like expecting that the offense can't be worse with your Carson Wentz in the game, and then TJ Hawkinson, ugly. Now you can maybe guess that you might get that against the Bengals. I did talk about this with my co-manager where we do have TJ Hawkinson, and whether or not like we would give them one more week because of the Bengals game, and that may depend on who slips through waivers versus TJ Hawkinson at this point. We might hold on to him one more week. We'll see. But that's what I got for fantasy right now after waivers, and I'll see you guys when I see you.